Hi, I'm Heather Hilder-Darling on Let's Talk Property today on Radio Reverb 97.2 FM and DAB. So let's get moving. That sounds quite appropriate, doesn't it? If you've moved as many times as I have in my lifetime, you think I'd be familiar with all the ins and outs and questions that buyers and sellers ask. Actually, it becomes a little bit over familiar to me sometimes, and you do forget to ask those little questions that mean a lot. And actually, as estate agents, we have to use our ears an awful lot rather than doing all the talking. We do hear so much about first-time buyers, especially in the news recently. But what about first-time sellers? Are they the forgotten crowd? The first-time sellers are those that I would judge have never sold a property before, or maybe it was so long ago that they've forgotten what it was like in the olden days, and they may be unaware as to how legislation and the systems have changed. And of course, recently in the news, and with the stamp duty land tax deadline ending on the 30th of June, that affects buyers who are moving into a property over the allocated price ranges and sellers as well. As media headlines claim rising average prices for property, how daunting is moving after many years? Today on Let's Talk Property, I'm joined by Josh Sharples. Now, Josh is the station producer of Radio Reverb, so I'm going to have to be on my best behaviour. And James Duffy, the compliance guru of Callaway's Residential Sales and Lettings. James is also the Sussex representative of Arla Property Mark. So lovely for you to be joining me today. Thank you, Josh, for joining us, and James as well.
Hello, Heather.
Hello.
James.
Are you both feeling comfortable?
Yes, as comfortable as can be.
Yeah. We're still not in the studio, are we? So we're relying on good old Zoom, but hopefully soon enough we'll be there. Now, I want to just put you both on the property spot to start with. And James, this might be a bit simpler for you because obviously you work in estate agency. So could you just give me maybe 3 questions that you can think of when it comes to, just imagine you're selling your property. What would you ask of your agent?
First question I would ask them would be their experience of selling similar properties in the local area to where my property is. I would ask them, second question would be how they could assist me finding my next property. The third question would be if they are part of any regulatory body and if they are qualified.
I like those answers, James, but Josh, did you ask yourself any of those questions when you came to appoint your agent?
I did actually, yeah. I think you have to ask those questions to make you go forward. I think thinking about how long will it take was a big question for me actually. The process behind it. I sold my place 20 years. I bought this place 20 years ago, so I think it's changed a lot in those 20 years. I presume.
Were you shocked about the changes?
No, I think because I was thinking back to when I bought the place. I was helped by my mum, which was amazing. She helped me with the deposit. And also my partner at the time, his niece, I think it is, she was a solicitor, so we kind of got a bit of help in that. So it was a bit easier than I expect, and it kind of fell into place quite quickly, quite easily.
So you were sort of a pale green rather than totally green when you moved into it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Were there any particular questions that you wished you'd asked before you put it on the market?
Do you mean my property now?
Yes.
I think that my estate agent actually answered quite a lot of the questions, really. I think the thing for me is what James said was about the can you help me find the next property? I think that's very important for me at the moment. That is what's come up for me since, because I've gone under offer so quite quickly, I think, and so the doubt and the oh my God, where am I going to go? It's kind of that, and that's what's kind of ruling me at the moment a little bit, to be honest.
There's a lot going on in your head all the time, isn't there?
Yeah, sleep. I've kind of dozed off on the sofa and got up and dragged myself to bed, and then I can't sleep because I'm thinking about, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Oh dear. So, Josh, just to introduce yourself, thank you for those couple of questions. I hope I did put you on the spot a little bit. So, you work as station producer for Radio Reverb.
Yes.
That must be very different to buying and selling property, or is it?
I don't know, actually. Well, that's a good one, Heather. I think because I'm new in the role of that as well. I got the job just over a year ago. So, and again, that's something new that I've never done before. So obviously I've been into music and things like that, but never had to help run a full radio station. So there's things that you have to be kind of on the ball with and precise and like scheduling. So it's all kind of similar.
It's still a very people business, though, isn't it?
Yes,
what
absolutely.
you do, you're helping people, you're guiding people, and I think, James, isn't that something that we do as agents?
Yes, and I think it does. Every seller is at a different stage in their process and experience. I mean, Josh bought his property that he's now selling 20 years ago. Even though things have changed, his experience of buying will be completely different to what the experience would be for selling. So they are completely different worries that you have and apprehensions and skills that you need. So it is a people business. It's about really understanding both sides of the transaction to understand that the end goal is achieved. Because if you don't listen and understand, and also from a seller's perspective, sellers really do need to be honest with the estate agent they want to instruct, to be clear on what their end goal is. Because if you don't really explain that at the beginning, you may get the wrong advice, or you might end up engaging the wrong estate agent who hasn't got the right skills to help you. So I think what people forget to do sometimes, I think a lot of people in the industry see it as a people business. I do sometimes worry that the consumers, whether that be the buyers or the sellers, see it very much as a transactional situation, and maybe that some estate agents historically have been after just chasing the deal, but that has changed over a number of years now, because to actually get a transaction through, you really do need to do a lot more than just put a property on one of the portals. So fundamentally it is a people business. Yeah,
with the radio, I suppose you've got the listeners and you've got the producers and the presenters, so it's trying to keep that balance, isn't it, of making good radio and listening to both sides, which is similar, isn't it?
Well, it's that 2 ears and 1 mouth thing again, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes maybe agents can be accused of not listening. And I know James and I have had this conversation before, that people say, I want a 3-bedroom property with a garden, and then they might buy something completely different. But you've got to start somewhere, because the start is not necessarily the end result either. Would that be correct, James?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you initially start looking, Josh, you've touched on it, you're sitting thinking, what about my next purchase? The best advice I can give is just keep your options reasonably wide and open. And over time, you'll then definitely come across something, and it'll narrow down. That if you become too strict on your search at the very early stage, you could miss a real good opportunity that's just slightly outside of your criteria, and you think, I never thought of that. And that's where it comes down to. I think the internet's been a brilliant thing for property searching, but I think a lot of people have relied on setting themselves up to get alerts from the portals and not then engaging with the professionals on the ground. And the best advice I can give anyone, specifically in this market when there is a real shortage of quality property, that unless you're going to have that proper engagement with a local or a couple of local decent agents where you're looking to buy, you may not pick up on these potential properties that don't quite fit your criteria, but they go, have you thought about X, or have you thought about Y? I've got this one coming on. Those alerts can't offer you that bit of advice, and that's a little bit of a tip from me.
No, that's good.
We often hear that moving house is very, very stressful on the Richter scale. So, Josh, I'm going to ask you, you may not be able to answer with one number. Obviously, you've got all the stages that you go through. Am I going to put it on the market now? Is now the right market? Right, I'm going to choose an agent. Right, we're going to put it on the market. Right, the viewings are happening. Your experience from when you first decided to now you've got your property under offer and subject to contract, how have the emotions played in your mind? You've already said you can't sleep. What's been going on?
So I would say, I mean, on the Richter scale, there's a Richter scale, but on the scale, I swear between 5 and 7 on that thing, so it's quite stressful. And then sometimes the thing that really helps is talking to my estate agent and talking to friends, talking to people who've been in that similar situation, and they can help, because your mind can create things that actually aren't there, and you can build upon the fear, and the fear becomes like, oh my God, I can't, this is too much. And then if you talk to somebody else and get that support, you can see it in a different way, and it calms you down a bit. So and actually, like last night was one of those nights that I just for about half an hour I just couldn't sleep, just going round and round. But then I woke up this morning and I felt clear. And so it's like a roller coaster. It's the waves. Sometimes I'm really, really sorted with it. I know exactly what I'm going to do. This is absolutely right. And then other times I'm thinking, oh my God, what the hell?
What am I doing? Yes.
Yeah. But actually, I've been thinking about it a lot today, and I know it's the right thing to do. Like I'm the kind of person that won't, if it's not the right thing to do, then I'll be constantly trying to find somewhere to stop doing it. But I know this is the right thing for me to do. It's for me. So.
It's very weird how nighttime is the time when our fears and all our sort of unconscious, oh my goodness, what am I doing, come to the fore. James, have you found that that's something that people experience as buyers and sellers a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can underestimate the amount of things that need to be considered when you're not just selling, but also want to tie in a purchase. It's not just worrying about all the elements of getting the property sold, but then you've got to worry about trying to find somewhere. But if you're also changing area, even just slightly, it's all the other bits that you've got to consider. It might be work, it might be doctors, it might be schools, it depends what the client is. So all these things just keep racing around people's mind, and there's so much to consider. On top of that, they're anxious about whether they're even going to find the property that they like. So it is very, very common. And I think the only advice, that you can really give to clients is you just got to take it. I know it's easier said than done, because obviously most of us have moved, even if you've been moving for renting, it's not such a commitment, but it still gives you anxiety if you're not careful. But you've got to focus on getting the best buyer for your property, making sure the property is as sellable as possible. Once you've got that as clear as you can make it, then you've got the foundations to then go out and find something. And buyers have to be patient, or you could choose to break the chain. But obviously, that's another consideration. You've then got to think where you're going to go in the interim. So because there are quite a few considerations along the way, it makes it more difficult for people. So you've got to try as much as possible as take one thing at a time. And Josh makes a good point. Talk to people that are friends or family that have gone through it, and also if you've engaged a good quality estate agent, they should be experienced enough to help you diffuse the things that seem a big thing, but they're not really, because we do it all day long and we can say, well, it might look a big thing to you, but actually this can be easily resolved. Don't worry. So
Radio Reverb 97.2.
Do you think we make enough of the emotional side of buying and selling?
Probably not, actually. I think it's a really important part of the move, isn't it? So it's a process, isn't it? So you are moving house, and I know that for a fact, isn't it, that it's one of the most stressful things that you can do. So I think to know that there's some support there from whoever you want it from is a really important thing, and it's probably underplayed, to be honest.
Well, we all do it. We all know it's one of the most stressful things. But you think how many people are moving, day in, day out, week after week, month after month. We all do it. But I think that's because we've got another goal in mind. Maybe we want to get a better work-life balance, or maybe we just want new opportunities where we're moving to. Maybe we want more green space, and all that sort of comes into play way as well. And fear is such a dreadful thing. It can hold us back for so many reasons, when actually, and I think you're right, you know, talking to friends and family and your agent who says, well, no, this is normal. Don't worry about it. Everybody goes through. I mean, we have enough stressful moments in the office as well, James. Let's be said, you know, I mean, when exchange days are coming up and, you know, completion days, and you just sort of think, well, you know, we just got to deal with it. It is a process, and you deal with the process. Now, this might be a little bit too early to ask you, Josh, but do you see yourself moving again in the future, or is this your last move?
Maybe my last move, I think, at the moment. I think what you were saying earlier, just then, Heather, about why I'm moving. I think I've been. I live in Central Hove, so it's quite busy place, and it's been a fantastic place. It's great, but I'm coming up to being 52, and I just want something different. I've changed a lot, and I think I want to live in a different kind of space, with a bit more space for myself, really, and that's the reason. So.
I think a lot of people have come to that over the past sort of 18 months. We're all reassessing what we really want out of life. Do we want to keep on this hamster wheel rushing around and everything? And yet so many people have found pleasure in the small things, like going for walks, having a pet, doing the gardening, growing vegetables, growing plants. And do you think this is a very human response to all this stress that we've had? Actually, you've added more stress to your life, really, haven't you, Josh, by moving? Yeah. But what do you think generally? Do you think this is just a natural reaction to the last 18 months?
Yeah, I was going to say about COVID, because I think COVID, it's been a very unsettling time, hasn't it, for everyone? So to have some kind of distraction or some familiarity, like a pet, or going for a walk and just clear your head. I know, like, I've had days where I just, you know, we've been asked not to leave the flat for a week. So you just, again, you're in your head again. So by going out and just doing those small things, going into the garden, and it just clears your head, and you can think clearer, I think, and it helps.
But we are very lucky, aren't we, in Central Hove? A short walk down to the beach, another perhaps short drive up to the Downs. We've got lots of parks in Hove. It is a wonderful place to live. But sometimes you're still looking for that little extra special something that might pull you further away. James, you've lived in several places, haven't you? I mean, do you get stressed? On the one hand, you're an agent. On the other hand, you're an ordinary human being. How does it affect estate agents when they move?
Well, we have the same issues, because obviously we've still got to balance all of our personal circumstances around trying to move, and also I also have inside knowledge that, you know, of maybe what really can go wrong. I think the overriding worry that I would have as a professional, because all day long I try to reassure our clients that it will be okay and take it one step at a time. But I think the fundamental worry for a professional is nothing is certain. That's one of the problems with the transactions in the UK, is that no one is committed until the exchange, and that's one thing that, as someone buying but also as a professional, I'm very aware that it doesn't matter how much you can calm yourself down at any stage, the seller or the buyer or the chain of people. You could be in a chain of 5 or 6 people. There's only got to have one person to lose their confidence or lose their job or decide that they've made the wrong decision, and the whole thing potentially collapses. So that is something that you cannot tell anyone it'll be okay. That is just the system. But when I've moved or when I've bought, I have applied the same. I really do my research on the agent that I want to sell through. And sometimes, actually, I've done my research on the agent that I've seen a property through. I know that sounds a bit hard to manage that, because the agents either got the property or they haven't, but I do find myself doing a bit of background checking, because then I think to myself, well, I'm going to need to, if for example, if they're not obviously specialists in that area, they seem to have a property which is not something they would normally carry on their stock, or they're not members of Property Mart for whatever reason, I then think to myself, well, maybe I need to, knowing what I know about the industry, be a little bit more forceful with due diligence and ask more questions about the property than maybe what they are being transparent about. But specifically when I've come to sell, I would say that I put a lot of emphasis on the quality of the person that I'm going to be dealing with, because it is, okay, we all want the best price and we all want to pay the most competitive fee, but I know that I need to be able to call that estate agent that I'm selling through and lean on them and really trust that they're going to give the correct information back to me about the chain. It's one of the questions I actually ask is, okay, brilliant, you've come out to present to me and I've actually built up a good rapport with you and I actually do trust you to sell my property. But once I put it on the market, will I be dealing with you, or are you passing on to another colleague? And that will depend on the size of the organisation or the agent you want to sell through. And that's quite an important question, because you as a seller could think that you're going to have the whole transaction with that person, but actually they might just all day long go out and value houses and don't deal with any viewings or don't deal with any offers or don't deal with any of the conveyancing process. And actually you may not talk to that person, potentially, depending on the size of the firm. And if they answer that question and say, well, no, you won't be dealing with me, you then need to say, well, who will I be dealing with, and can I meet those? Can I meet the team? So they're the things that I would go a bit deeper on myself, because I put quite a bit of emphasis on the building of the relationship, because it could be a 4-month transaction that I've got to be able to really engage with those people.
Exactly. I think this is really why having somebody on the end of a phone, I mean, at the moment, there's so much prop tech, as we call it, all the technical systems that go on in property. And I think we would like to see prop tech making the system from start to finish quicker, but you still have to have a process in there and you still need to do the checks and balances at the moment. So do you think that any other prop tech would have made what you've been doing, putting your property on the market, simpler, Josh? Or have you been happy so far with the way it's been carried out?
I've actually been happy with the way it's carried out, actually. I think it's been, I think the emails that come through all the time, and exactly. I think for me, it's knowing what to do and knowing what to do in the right time.
Order.
In the right order, yeah. And but also not to give yourself such a hard time about, got to do that, and push yourself. And so that's more what I'm kind of, the process of all the tech stuff, I think is okay with me, I think.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So this is really a question for both of you. James, I'll start with you first, because I know you're very, very keen to educate, the public about what buying is all about, what selling is all about, the processes. Are estate agents sometimes guilty of not sharing with their clients what's going on behind the scenes?
I think there's a fine line there between, say, not sharing and managing the process, because we hear from lots of sellers that it can be very stressful, the transaction, and we're the professionals in this transaction, and we have to not hold back information. That would be completely wrong, but we need to manage how that information is communicated and actually confirm it's actually correct, because sometimes you can get misinformation up the chain. And I think what sometimes the industry is guilty of is not telling people all what is involved in the transaction, so that people understand, actually it's quite a big job to do. One of the things I think the industry and the prop tech area should probably look at, and I'm sure there's things in development, is that once a transaction is almost sealed, if you like, and all the people in the chain are, identifiable, then they have some way of all logging into a secure technical app that gives them some transparency about how the chain is progressing, so they don't have to rely on maybe mixed messages or incorrect information. It's very transparent, but it would rely on the right tech, and it would rely on the people updating that correctly. But I think that would give some reassurance to people in their transaction, that they can see where things are being held up and maybe where it's going very well, without having to always rely on whether they believe they're getting the right message. But I think there's an element of what you have to try and manage to not freak people out, but also you have to be honest and transparent.
Josh, what would your opinion be on how educative we are, or educative is probably the right word, on what's going on, what's happening next? Because I think if you give people too much information to start with, they just get confused. And you said it's like a process, and obviously each process has a step-by-step way of moving forward. Is that the way that you felt you've been handled, or do you want to know the steps a little bit further ahead?
No, I think a very slow step by step. For me, that's better, because otherwise you can be bombarded, and that creates fear again, doesn't it? And
yes,
and doubt, and because I think for me, I know when I'm going to do something, and it feels like I'm procrastinating over it, but actually what's happening is I don't need to do it yet, but it feels like I'm procrastinating. I go, oh my God, I've got to do that. But actually, when I'm ready to do it and it needs to be done, me as a person will do that and do it. And so the process has been, I've had it as it comes along, and it's felt the right time. Yeah, the right time. And but now I'm because I've got this about moving and not knowing what I'm going to do. That is just playing on my mind at the back of my mind. So I'm trying to just hold on to the fact that this is what I'm doing now, but this voice in my head is saying, you've got to find some way. And what are you going to do? You're going to rent, you're going to move, what are you going to do with your stuff? And so it's all, So having a step-by-step, what I say is having a step-by-step thing is better, because you'll have those other nagging voices in your head. That makes sense. I'm not making sense.
Okay. Is there anything that you've been surprised about what agents do that you didn't actually know, Josh, from the outset? I mean, obviously we can't go through everything that we do as agents and many other agents, but is there any area that you think, oh, I wish they did that, or maybe they do, but it's not been communicated properly, or something that's just happened in the past few weeks that you thought, oh, I didn't know they did that?
I've liked the fact that you can't get to know the people who are interested. So, but for me, I'm a person, and I kind of like to know who's interested in the property, and I've kind of gone for that kind of human side aspect of who I chose to who I wanted to give the offer to. So that's a really good aspects. I don't know if I've answered your question there, Heather.
I think that's fine. No, I think we understand. And actually, that is the human side of estate agency, isn't it? And as I said at the outset, above and beyond everything else, I think if you're a people person, those are the aspects of estate agency that you enjoy. We go out to engage with people as well as do a transaction, because I think I've said I've moved loads of times, and I just know how difficult it can be. But to trust your agent to be perhaps sometimes on the end of the phone going, oh, should I call him or shouldn't I? And you think, no, he's my agent, I'm going to call him. It doesn't matter how many times a day. That's what you should be there for. And I think you should feel that that's okay to do that. And not to worry that, I shouldn't be calling them, but because that's the responsibility. I will say though, I was thinking about me going to look at properties, just saying what I said about the estate agent, telling me who these people were, and a little bit about them, not everything. I went to see some properties and I didn't get that information. I didn't feel I got a sense of, it was get me in, look around the property and get me out. There was not much conversation, so it is a good, just for that personal touch, I think. And I think the other thing is, when you first bought your property that you're in at the moment, you bought it for a reason, and I suppose we're all looking for people that we sort of click with or just tick along with sometimes. And why did you buy your property? Because it's got A, B, C, therefore the people that are going to buy your property are probably very, very similar to you yourself. Yeah, well, it's interesting because I bought my property from I was a barber, and I was just talking about that I was looking for somewhere to live, and the client said, "Oh, I know someone who's selling," and that's how that started.
it just, and that's it. And I've been here for 20 years. So
Well.
it's strange, isn't it?
And you've probably done a lot of cuts since then.
Who needs property portals when you've got them resources?
Exactly. Well, I think this is it. People forget.
Barbershops.
People forget that, you know, if you talk to people, they very often come up with I know somebody who's selling. Oh, I know somebody who's thinking about it.
I'll have to give you some of my cards, Josh, when you're chatting.
Absolutely.
So I'm just really curious, you know, sometimes people decide to sell their property themselves without an agent. How would that make you feel, Josh?
Does the quietness say it all?
It's a no-go, is it? A no-go?
Yeah, I think so. I think I prefer a professional to do it, actually.
Yeah.
I think I did think about it, but for about a millisecond.
So your friends talked you out of it, did they?
No, a friend, I think I know somebody who did do it themselves, and they were all right with it. But I think it depends on what kind of person you are. I think for me, I just prefer to just pass it on and let the professionals do it. And
Okay, so just talking about your property, when you were thinking about putting it on the market, and you're sort of on high alert about, you know, what are they going to be looking for? What did you feel was the most attractive feature of your property?
it was the garden.
The garden. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, actually, location as well. Actually, it's the location as well.
And did you have any idea how agents worked out what your property was worth? Had you done your own research or anything like that?
I've looked at other properties similar to mine in my area. I hadn't done much research, to be honest, but I think because the market is so because of the stamp duty and it's very competitive, isn't it? With people, I didn't know what I'd get, actually. I had a figure in my mind, and yeah, so I was kind of, I was a bit unsure about what I would get, to be honest. But I kind of knew what other prices for the flats have gone for in my area.
Now, James is a great advocate for preparing documentation before you put your property on the market. Isn't that right, James?
I am, and that's purely to save everyone's heartache at the end when they realise they haven't got it and they can't move. Yeah.
How did that work out with you, Josh?
Having the documentation.
Yeah,
it's great. It's great to have that kind of stuff. I think it's. I've got a little thing in my email with selling a house. So I put all my documentation into there, keeping it in one place, and so it's good to have all that. I think I'm one for just having things everywhere else, but I've realised I think selling a house is really important. You need to have it where you can get at it.
Yeah.
Because if anyone needs anything, then you know where it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Were you aware of all the sort of the procedures for viewings during lockdown? And how did you feel about strangers coming into your home? I mean, admittedly, I think it was a little bit sort of when the rules were relaxed, but how did that make you feel?
I was okay with it. I think as long as my estate agents were prepared with all what they had to do about masks and stuff. So, and all the people who came to see my flat were prepared and knew exactly what they had to do. So, I'm okay with that. I was fine with it. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Now, when you got your feedback after your viewings, did it feel very personal? Because I know that some sellers prefer not to hear, because it's your home after all. I know you may be selling it, but it's your home. You've been there for a long time, and it can feel very personal. You know, how did you actually feel? Was this one of your on the crest of a wave or at the bottom of the deep blue sea moment?
Yeah, I think I went through, especially with the offers. I went through a bit of a funny. I was on a bit of a downer then because my mind just went, oh, it's not what I thought it was. Not what I thought it was worth, and oh my God, what am I going to do? And yes, but I think with the feedback, it was good feedback I got. I think mainly good feedback. Yeah.
I mean, just on that, Heather and Josh, is that that it is, you touched on it, Heather, about it's personal, it's your property, but the best advice I can give to people is you just need to detach yourself from that, unless it's particularly constructive, where the agent is saying to you, look, you should really be looking to present it this way or that way, or move this room around or whatever to get the best from the property. But sometimes the viewers, give the most strangest feedback for any reason, because sometimes they don't want to offend, and so you have to just some of it take it with a pinch of salt, because it's not aimed at you personally.
Yes.
But people do get sometimes hung up on that, and some people don't give feedback at all, which is frustrating. But they just never return a call, and you just don't know why they didn't like it. But
I must admit, I think, we always ask for feedback, but if somebody doesn't return our calls, it's just one of those things, and it does happen. You can't take offense at it. It's just that they've probably moved on to the next property and they're feeling that stress of finding somewhere as much as you are. But we like to feedback, as James said, just so that, if you did this or if you did that, it might not make any difference to the price or anything, but just presentation wise. How closely have you been following the news about the housing market, Josh? How the property prices have increased, the delays in searches and conveyancing. How much has that actually affected your personal situation?
I've kind of kept an eye on it just through the news and stuff, and just knowing personally what's going on. So it hasn't really affected me at all. I think I knew that the stamp duty was coming to end at the end of June, so I knew that it wouldn't affect me at all. So,
but would you feel that your interest was more heightened? If you suddenly were listening to the radio and you suddenly heard, "Oh, property," and you suddenly sort of go, "Oh, I must turn the volume up a little bit there because."
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I've been watching a lot of programs on Channel 4 about getting your own place, which I've not been bothered about normally, but I'm really interested in that. It's very interesting, that.
Oh, that is interesting. Oh, fantastic. Now I can't believe it. We're coming up to our 45 minutes because obviously following this, I've got a discussion that I had with Graham Seller, head of mortgages at Santander, which is sort of in the same line, because although you're a first-time seller, Josh, you're also a buyer, not a first-time buyer, but a second-time buyer, and that was a long time ago. So it'd be interesting to hear how we get on. But just pre-closing, Josh, I'm going to ask you to imagine that you wake up as the housing minister tomorrow. What would be your first 3 steps to simplify the process for selling your property that you would make?
I think it's just being clear with all parties what's going on. Every step of the way. I think having that personal relationship with your estate agents is another important thing for me.
I think you did already mention about keeping everything in the right place. So maybe,
absolutely, yes, that's definitely,
I mean, it must be quite difficult, when you've perhaps got leases and land registry titles and mortgage documents that you've just shoved in a drawer somewhere. Do you think maybe the portals or a platform of some shape you should be able to draw on it?
That'd be a good idea, actually. Very much, yeah, absolutely. I mean, keeping everything in a folder is great, but also having that extra portal stuff would be good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know we're wrapping up soon. The other thing that I'd like to say is just important really is as instructing and choosing your estate agent is really instructing the right type of conveyancing solicitor, because if you can't get hold of your conveyancing solicitor throughout the transaction because either that they take on too much work because they're offering a cheap fee, or they work out of areas you can't actually ever go and see them to talk about a problem, then that could add another level of stress. So I think ask for recommendations, not necessarily through the estate agent if you don't want to, but through friends and family, and really ask the people, the conveyancers, how they can make sure that they're aware of your end goal as well, that they're an important cog in the wheel of this process.
Marvellous. That's only 2, James. I need one more tip from you.
Oh, okay. I would say I would be pushing for the tech industry to come up with my suggestion I talked about earlier, which is having a transparency so people can see the progress of the chain in the transaction. So to help reduce people's anxieties about what actually is going on up and down the chain. So I'd be pushing for that type of work to happen.
Marvellous.
I've got another one actually, Heather. Sorry.
Oh, please, fire away.
Just take a breath.
Take a breath and meditate. That's probably not a bad idea,
meditate,
actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, don't let it get on top of you.
Yeah.
I put medicate on my bit of paper. I should have said meditate, shouldn't I?
And medicate.
Meditate, absolutely. Well, Josh, I mean, it's been fabulous talking to you as somebody who is a first-time seller, and I hope it hasn't put people off. I mean, obviously, you know, all your suggestions and not to just get too ahead of yourself. Obviously, you have to be a little bit ahead of the game. But it's fascinating for us because, you know, sometimes we don't speak to the buyers and sellers in quite as much detail as you've been happy to share with us today. So thank you very much for that. And James, is there anything you'd like to add just to finish off?
No, just to echo, really, I think it's really important to sort of really help people that are first-time sellers, because as you said at the very beginning of the show, we talk about a lot about first-time buyers, but it's a completely different set of circumstances you find yourself in as a first-time seller, trying to balance everything. Once you've sold something once, you've sort of got a lot better understanding, but it's quite daunting. So it's a good topic, and more should be spoke about, more to learn from it for all parties to improve the process. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so
good luck with your move, Josh.
Yeah, good luck with your move. So that brings that part of our show to a conclusion, and let's now listen to me speaking to Graham Seller, Head of Mortgages at Santander.
Radio Reverb.
Making music night and day. 97.2 FM.
Graham, good morning. We're talking about first-time buyers now and coming out of lockdown and the future of UK home ownership. How scary is it for first-time buyers?
Well, we did a report in 2019, and it basically told us that the first-time buyers were struggling with deposits and affordability. And we've gone back and done another study in 2021 to see how the pandemic's affected the first-time buyers. And actually, it's harder now to buy your first home than it was 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, it wasn't easy. We've seen house prices rise. We've seen other buyers come in, next-time buyers, second-time buyers, and buy-to-let landlords. And it's proved harder for first-time buyers to buy their first home, even though they want to buy their first home even more than ever. So, yeah, very difficult, Heather.
A lot of first-time buyers have delayed their plans, haven't they, because of the problems that you've just told us about, so saving for a deposit. But if you can borrow money towards a deposit, is that going to help them get on the ladder quicker?
Yeah, so what we've seen is probably a couple of years ago, about 30% of first-time buyers said deposit was the biggest barrier, whereas that number's now about 52%. Over half first-time buyers are saying that's the biggest barrier. So if you can access deposit, whether that's self-saved or whether that's bank of mum and dad or back of gran and granddad, obviously it's going to help. But because the house prices have gone up, you probably need slightly more deposit. The government guarantee scheme, which launched in April, and Santander supports that scheme, has brought back 95% mortgages. So you can access the market with a 5% deposit. But clearly the rates you'll pay, etc., will be higher. So the bigger deposit you can save, or the more money you can get put forward to your home, then it will make the rates lower and the affordability better for you.
The problem is with, I mean, I'm based in the southeast in Brighton, and obviously we've seen house prices absolutely rocket down here. And, you know, the stamp duty holiday in effect hasn't had, well, I don't think it's had the effect it was meant to have, because all it's done is push prices up further, with people thinking, well, actually, because I don't have to pay stamp duty now, I can afford a little bit more, making it more difficult for first time buyers to get onto that market. And you mentioned good old mum and dad and nans and grands. granddads. Aren't they brilliant? But, I'm sure they have had to help out an awful lot over the past 18 months and actually make sure that they're safe themselves financially moving forward. So where do we go from here? A lot of the younger buyers have really felt the effects of furlough, unemployment and reduced income. Is there no hope for them? Or, all the government-backed schemes and affordability, things that the banks can offer, is that going to help them out of this mess, actually?
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple of things there. The stamp duty concessions, which came in last July, and they're sort of tapering off now at the end of June and again at the end of September. That has helped other buyer types because first-time buyers did have concessions before. So that seems to have fueled house price growth, as you mentioned. What we're calling for is sort of industry and government to work together to say, well, what is it can we do to make longer-term affordability for first-time buyers rather than sort of ad hoc changes? And the two areas, deposits, there are schemes that the government already do for military personnel where they lend money to sort of key workers. Well, they do it for military personnel, but why can't they extend that for key workers where you can lend the first-time buyer the monies for the deposit and then they end up paying that back through their PAYE over the coming years? And that might be a way to access deposits. But to your point about the local area, the stamp duty concession, can that not be sort of regionalised? Because clearly sometimes, if the numbers are back down to 250,000, then in certain parts of the UK, that doesn't really work, doesn't really help, as prices are higher than that. So it's sort of, can you regionalise that to make the market more accessible for first-time buyers? So there's different bits we're calling for, but there's no magic answer. I probably said a couple of years ago, it's really difficult, and it's more difficult now. So I don't want to be sitting here in 2 years' time saying it's even more difficult. So we do need to find some solutions for first-time buyers.
Do you not think this is just a problem that never goes away? I remember a long time ago when I was a first-time buyer trying to organise a deposit, and I think at the time the multiples of salaries were about 2.5 plus half of the second person's. And in fact, I've heard some horrendous sort of 8 times salary in some areas of the country. If we're looking at affordability at perhaps 4.5 times an applicant's income, how much will it leave them for day-to-day living?
Indeed, you're absolutely right. I mean, in terms of supply and demand, though, if we can find ways of bringing more property onto the market, and traditionally we've been saying new build more properties, but there's definitely an opportunity to be able to change more commercial properties into residential properties. So we know that online shopping's taken more of that market, and there must be ways of using existing property, which is commercial, to make that more residential. Now, the more we have properties, then clearly, hopefully the prices would then settle or fall. Now, the problem in that area is it's not just about changing the property from being an office to a home, because you need the local amenities, you need all the infrastructure. And if we do that right, or we work with government and get that right, it could be we can bring more properties on, use existing buildings, etc., and actually bring the prices back to where they need to be to sort that affordability out. So I'm hopeful, Heather, we can find solutions. It doesn't necessarily mean it just gets worse and worse and worse. I think you're right. It has got worse over the recent past, but there must be ways of helping more people buy their own home.
And the other side of that, of course, is lockdown has shown us that we're all looking for places with outside space. We're looking for green spaces. I mean, when you fly in over the UK and you see all these green fields, you can't imagine that some places don't actually have a little backyard with a piece of lawn on it, don't you? But, it's all very well converting commercial properties into residential, but equally the people who reside there will be wanting their own little balconies or their own little communal area to sort of go, and the roof terraces maybe. Is that possible with converting commercial property?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, what the study shows as well is that more people want to own their own home, but you've got these sort of virtual commuter belts where people want to live a little bit more outside town centres and, like you say, have a garden, have somewhere to work, etc., with the way the world's changed. And you can't make properties for customers unless that's what they want. So they may need more conversions, but I think you're absolutely right. It's got to be thought through. You can't just change an office into 4 flats, because that won't lead to good living over the years to come. You need gardens, you need open spaces, and you need the amenities in the local area. But that's just one of the things we think we should discuss more. rather than some of the sort of blunt tools we've used recently, stamp duty, etc., which does cause more properties to be sold, but it has caused more house price inflation, which doesn't really help in the rounds.
So the first time buyers that you spoke to during the course of this survey, what exactly were they telling you, apart from the monetary side of buying a property? What were they telling you in terms of the facilities that they wanted within their properties? Did they say, I'd be very happy with a 1-bedroom as long as I've got a nice sized lounge kitchen, as long as I've got a little bit of outside space? What is it they want for their money?
Well, I think what they want is they want to own their own home. That's what's come through on the survey. So 63% of people say it's now more important to own my own home than before the pandemic. But I think people want somewhere to work at home. That's the thing that's come through on the survey, is that, whereas home working was something we might do once in a while, it seems to be something people want to plan for more. So an office at home is probably more important than a garden, but a garden also comes through very strongly. So it's the standard stuff, Heather. It's people want space and they want somewhere to be able to work at home and not be overrun because there's not enough room, I suppose. They're the two bits that come out.
Yeah.
The problem with that is the more space you need, the more the property costs, and then the affordability and the deposit aspect comes back in. But yeah, certainly first-time buyers want somewhere to work, somewhere to have a garden, and that's what it's saying in bigger numbers than before.
So can you, just to finish off, Graham, just explain what Santander can do to support first-time buyers?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we, as I said before, we're in the mortgage guarantee scheme, so we're open for 5% deposit mortgages. We're very happy to accept bank of mum and dad, gran and granddad gifted deposits. You've got terms up to 40 years, which makes mortgages more affordable, etc. But I would urge the listeners to come onto our website. We've got some fantastic new tools on there. If you go to the local area, it tells you how much the property prices are, how much deposit you need to save, and then you put down how much you can save, and it tells you how long it will take you. And if you have got mum and dad or gran and granddad, you can also add that into the equation to show you how that can save time, etc. So come on the website, look at all the first-time buyer sections and educate yourself, because it's the biggest financial commitment you're probably ever going to make. You should always take the time to make sure you make the right decisions.
Absolutely. And it's not an overnight decision either, is it? So you need to start planning this well in advance.
Absolutely. And it's more important to make the right decision than a quick decision, definitely.
Fantastic. So I really love the work that's been done on this, and I think we need to give our young people the best start in life as possible, and obviously owning your own home gives you a great sense of self-worth, and it gives you a great sense of let's go out and move up that ladder and get to where we want to go, and it's great to think that the government and banks and building societies are helping to achieve that. So thank you so much for talking to me today, Graham. I think you've probably got a busy time ahead of you. As
lovely.
we come out of lockdown.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time as well.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
My hour has come to an end. I do hope you've enjoyed listening to all my guests. I'll be back again next month with more interviews. If you work in property or have a specific interest in property and would like to appear on the programme, contact me via Instagram or Facebook, and I'd be delighted to hear from you. Really, anything local is of interest, including architecture, surveying, interior design, gardening. We love everything property, obviously, so please get in touch. Thank you for listening today. I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I have. Bye for now from Let's Talk Property on Radio Reverb, 97.2 FM and DAB.